The NBA has always been a hotbed for speculation and conspiracy theories. Is LeBron guilty of using performance-enhancing drugs, or could he just be the freak athlete we've always known him to be? Is the NBA truly concerned for its smaller markets, or is the only real agenda hitting a quota during the playoffs? You're telling me that a certain duo has switched places without reporting it to the league? Let's get to the bottom of the truth. Conspiracy theories surrounding PEDs have haunted the NBA for decades. Critics argue that the league and its officials have turned a blind eye to drug enhancements used by star players, protecting their marketability and their brand image. But how much is just common speculation versus reality-based, and where does the league stand on the issue? The use of performance-enhancing drugs is strictly prohibited in the National Basketball Association. The league has implemented an anti-drug policy that includes testing players for banned substances and imposing penalties for violations, which we are all well aware happens more frequently than you might think. I mean, take Ja's tweet last January where he mentioned he'd already been drug tested 6 times that season and was on his way to get yet another one. We joke that a 50-point performance equals a trip to the nurse, but the accuracy is actually on point. It's not like it's a new epidemic. I mean, it's common knowledge that several sports leagues have an extremely high usage of steroids among its players. But when it comes to the NBA, it's less in the spotlight and far more taboo. Of course, there are players we are keenly aware of over the past years that were penalized with suspensions. Don McLean in 2000, Rashard Lewis in 2009, and OJ Mayo in 2011, just to name a few. The most recent name that comes to mind is DeAndre Ayton, who suffered a hefty suspension of 25 games for using diuretic, a drug that increases the production of urine, one that in the grand scheme of options was far from the most impactful. In the 2019-2020 season, Malik Monk also found himself in somewhat of a predicament after he tested positive for PEDs and had to sit out for months during the bubble. We also can't forget in 2011 when Derrick Rose was asked, if 1 equals what are PEDs and 10 equals everybody's juicing, how big of an issue is illegal enhancing in your sport? And of course, Rose answered, 7. It's huge, and I think we need a level playing field where nobody has that advantage over the next person. So the question isn't if, it's who, how many, and is the league looking the other way when it comes to some of our favorite and most loved stars? Conspiracy is if the NBA tests players equally across the board, and we already know the answer is no. Chael Sonnen, a retired mixed martial artist and a major conspiracy theorist himself, asserted on the Flagrant podcast that he and LeBron share the same drug guy. He claimed to know the specific enhancers that the NBA legend uses, and that at the end of the day, they are necessary and unaltering to the game we see translated to the court. Of course, these comments are alleged, and the conversation again circles back to how much the league plays into the fairness and equity of who's getting tested and when. If a certain player were to go get all 9 drug tests before, let's say, April, then there could be a certain level of freedom to do whatever they want past that date, throughout the remainder of the season. There are many layers to the topic, and those layers have layers. So while speculations may be through the roof, we will probably never know the actual extent of PEDs in the league. Conspiracy theorists often claim that the NBA favors big market teams to maximize revenue and viewership. But over the course of league history, allegations suggest that the league could be manipulating rules, officiating, and scheduling to ensure the direction of large market teams based in major cities. Does the NBA care more about marketability over a competitive series? While these claims are purely speculation at this point, think of the many examples that have come to light even over the last few seasons. The NBA, like any professional sports league, seeks to maximize its revenue and viewership. It's a business that has exponentially grown and prospered. Since the 70s, when the league began picking up traction in the public eye, it's gone from being worth a good $500 million to now being valued at an astounding $90 billion. But have there been steps along the way that have favored certain narratives, players, and teams in order to rake in more revenue? One point conspiracy theorists often refer to are very blatant scheduling disparities. Certain teams from the larger and more robust markets receive more favorable schedules, such as playing fewer back-to-back games or having more rest between playoff series. This may seem small in the grand scheme of the game, although this advantage would allow players to perform better and increase their chances of advancing in the playoffs. Standing alone, what difference could a few more days of rest and late-night games accomplish? But what if you tack on bad officiating? It was just last season when Eric Lewis blatantly made a biased call against LeBron James during the closing seconds facing Boston. While a missed call or two is only human error, a deep dive into Lewis's personal life and past officiating exposed a darker side of the coin. It took fans on Twitter to begin their own investigation before the NBA officially took over and launched an investigation of its own. Refs may exhibit bias towards star players or large market teams. They claim that officials may be more inclined to make favorable calls for superstar players, generating more excitement and prolonging the series. Think Scott Foster, who we've deemed the extender for a reason. We know there have been many scandals in the past with officiating crews, and there is still validity to believe not all the corruption has been cleared. Other questions have been raised as well. The collective bargaining agreement was supposedly instituted to help smaller markets have more opportunity. Yet how has that panned out? We still see teams tanking purposefully in order to have better lottery odds. We've seen the lottery thrown in several cases to grant certain teams access to the best options, only to misuse those players and run them into the ground. We're seeing teams targeted for drafting well, primarily Golden State. Yet somehow the league finds no issue in allowing Durant, Harden, and Kyrie to join forces and burn down a franchise. The NBA's free agency period and player movement have been scrutinized under the market size conspiracy. Critics argue that large market teams have an advantage in attracting top-tier free agents due to their larger fan base, media exposure, and endorsement opportunities. This creates an imbalance in talent distribution and affects the competitiveness of the league. While the NBA market size conspiracy raises intriguing questions about the league's priorities, there are also examples that prove the opposite. Small markets that have suffered from severe playoff droughts have been on the rise, such as Sacramento. Often smaller markets are to blame for their own shortcomings. Take Portland, for example. So the laundry list of alleged disparities could be reasonable, or it could just be the natural progression of the 30 individual businesses that make up the league, each moving at their own pace, struggling through its own lows. All we can hope for is fairness across the board, and the NBA to value quality as much as it values quantity. This last conspiracy theory may seem unbelievable to pull off on the highest level of professional basketball, but the evidence seems to back it up. Yes, there have been instances where the Morris twins, Marcus Morris Sr. and Markieff Morris, have pretended to be each other during NBA games. Their physical resemblance and similar playing styles have allowed them to execute this prank on several occasions. They have outrightly admitted to swapping places before, both in elementary school and AAU, whether it be taking tests to cover for the other's flaws or faking an injured ankle when the other brother had fouled out. So who's to say they wouldn't at least try to trade places while playing in the NBA? One notable accusation occurred during the 2017-2018 NBA season, when Marcus Morris was playing for the Celtics and Markieff was with the Wizards. The two teams faced each other in a playoff series, and during Game 1, Marcus Morris intentionally wore Markieff's sneakers, causing confusion among the players, coaches, and fans. Markieff ended up rolling his ankle in Game 1, yet somehow came back in Game 2 to score 16 points to follow it up. While fans found it hilarious, making all kinds of theories as to who was who, Markieff was heated, claiming he took this series seriously and would never do anything of the sort. But history seems to speak louder. Another incident took place during the 2019-2020 NBA season when Marcus Morris was playing for the New York Knicks and Markieff was with the Detroit Pistons. The twins had switched jerseys leading up to the game, adding to some confusion among commentators and spectators. The switch was quickly noticed and clarified, but it proved how easily it could have gone another direction. But the twins are adamant about their individuality. They're different players with unique skill sets, but it doesn't erase a lifetime of knowing the other like the back of your hand, and who's to say they haven't had a few more switch-arounds? That is their secret only. Make sure to drop your favorite NBA conspiracy down in the comments.